Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this interesting session about a new feature to our CX 10,000 security first industry leading DPU based switch. My name is Aniruddha Jasu, and I'm the TME for switching team. I would be covering this new feature called as strict firewall mode. So, what is this feature? Well, um, we have been using the switch for switching routing purposes. We have been using the DPU on the switch for security policies and other policies in place. With this new feature, we are ensuring that we can also fulfill the requirement of strict firewalling. And the strict firewall mode is that this mode is not enabled by default for the obvious reasons, and it applies to the IPv4 and IPv6 unicast traffic only, right? It can be enabled on the CX box using the CX CLI, the REST-based config, which is pretty simple and straightforward. I will show that to you. This is a CX feature and not directly DPU-based, meaning strict firewalling and strict bypassing. You have the options to do both, is happening at non-DPU ASIC. You can choose to have certain VRF, certain V to strict bypass, meaning not let them redirect to the DPU and allow for communication. This can be done beforehand to globally enabling the firewall, which is interesting because you can use this in the brownfield scenario and it is easily acceptable. The existing setup wouldn't change. You can introduce whatever policies, bypassing you want, and then introduce the firewall feature set so that the existing traffic do not hamper. Minded that the multicast and the CPU directed traffic is not subjected to strict mode controls. It's just the IPv4, IPv6 unicast traffic, meaning what? The routing protocols working on the switch environment wouldn't get affected, and whatever is destined to the switch wouldn't be part of the entire strict mode control. It's just the traffic which is passing through, switched, routed, is what we are keeping it in the strict firewall mode and scenario. So multicast and CPU based are not. Also, you should know that the route only ports, the routed ports, sub interfaces, and the management VRF are not subject to this strict mode and are always in bypass mode. What does bypass mean? We are saying that the strict bypass, whatever traffic you do not want to be firewalled, you are bypassing them at the non-DPU ASIC itself. You're not sending it anywhere. You want those traffic to be unaffected for firewalling. So those you can choose. And by default, these are always in bypass mode. You don't have control on that. The leaf and the L3 AG profiles, there are 4 profile on CX10K. The leaf and the L3 AG profile strict mode operates at the VLAN level, and the L3 core and spine profile strictly operates at the VRF level. So basically, you have to understand where the switch is positioned in the environment and what profiling has been used. For example, the leaf mode, the border leaf mode, they have two different functionality. They have 2 different profiling, and the way the strict firewall would work depends upon the type of profile you have set. But the concept remains the same. You are firewalling, basically. It's just a matter how it does. It does that at the VRF level in these 2. It does on the VLAN level. So you have to configure it on all the VLANs. If you're configuring it on the VRF and you want it to be on VLAN, you have to do it on the VLAN as well. It's that simple. And reboot isn't required to switch between the strict firewall mode. That is, if you enable or disable, there is no need for reboot. The software is this. In this, you have the feature. The PSM relevant PSM version should be this, and the AFC should be on 7.2.2 for it to work. There are various use cases. Since it's a firewall feature, it comes in under zero trust environment. Wherever there is zero trust environment, you see we are going ahead in this direction everywhere, and it is required, it is expected. Highly regulated environments such as finance, healthcare, government workloads often require explicit whitelisting of allowed communication, and this can place well there and ensures tenant isolation. Although you can do leaking and all that today, but this makes sure that there is no such loopholes because everything is denied unless you bypass it, unless you redirect it to the DPU. So it's in your control, is what we are trying to say. Customer benefits, it aligns with the zero trust principles, which we are claiming and we are, you know, saying it. It reduces shadow traffic. There may be many things which may be happening and you do not necessarily have to track everything. Now the switch firewalling within, if you enable that mode, would do it, right? Obviously, there are a lot of things which you may not know and it is still hitting the switch or passing through the switch. Forces consistent, auditable, and deliberate policy creation. So it's like a routine. It's one-time thing, let's say, because that's what you're doing in the general firewall as well. So the command is pretty straightforward. It's just one single global configuration to make sure you have the strict firewall piece on the switch box. So basically, it supports on both the VSX and non-VSX environment, and there is a sync. So if you do it on the primary, it would sync it on the secondary, and you do it on system firewall mode strict, and that's it. This ensures that the switch has now become this firewall, which I've highlighted in green. And you can also say no system firewall mode strict. And to see the status of the firewall, straightforward command, show DSM firewall, it will show you the list, whether it is enabled, which are the traffic which are bypassed, which are the traffic which are dropped at VLAN and VRF level. So to enable bypassing, that means if you do not want certain traffic in a VLAN, for certain VLANs, you do not want that to be strict firewalled, you can choose that going under the VLAN context firewall mode strict bypass, or getting to the VRF, which usually you would do in a L3 core and spine profiling, firewall mode strict bypass. Okay, supported platform on this release is CX 10,000. Little more detail about the working of it is that prior to 10.16, prior to this release we are talking about, the current model in CX 10,000 series was switching first. What does it mean? No DSM redirection, no policy defined. If you have this scenario, everything can talk to each other, right? There's no firewall, basically, and there's no redirection. It's doing a general switching or routing capability, right? Everything can talk to each other. You see that here. But if you choose on 10K, you can do DSM redirection with policies in place, and you can define who should talk to whom. That you can do today by defining the policy. The red one, we are saying that you're not talking to them, VM2. So this is today, right? Switching first. With strict firewall mode in 10.16.1006, we are saying it is a firewall first. If you choose, it's not default, right? In that, what happens? Strict firewall is on. Let's say you choose that command which I showed you in the previous slide. Strict firewall is on, and you have a DSM redirection with policies already in place. So it's a brownfield scenario, you see. If you have a DSM already, you have a security policy defining that, look, VM1 should talk to VM3 and not VM2, etc., then it is possible because you can continue to do that. Because what happens is, as soon as you strict on the firewall works well, but if you have a policy in place, that takes precedence over it. That means it does not hamper your network. Remaining, whatever is not redirected, whatever VLANs or VRFs are not redirected, they do not have any policy, then the switch will drop them. The user traffic will be dropped at the switch itself. It won't even go to the DPU. Another scenario would be that you have a strict firewall on and no DSM redirection, no policies. That means everything gets blocked, right? That is a strict firewall thing. And if you have a strict firewall on and there is no DSM redirection, there is no policies, and you have a strict bypass on VRF or VLAN, you can communicate with each other because you are not letting those traffic You're just bypassing those traffic. You're choosing which ones. So you may have VM4 or 5, you still do not want them to be bypassed. Those will be blocked. So you have every control you need with this feature is, and it's pretty straightforward. It's on a CX, CLI, and REST configurable. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight that the PSM configuration and push to switch setting from the PSM, the redirection one, takes priority and overrides the switch firewall mode or strict bypass settings, which I just explained. If you already have this scenario, right? If you already have DSM redirection and policies in place and you now enable strict firewall on the CX, it does not hamper the redirected traffic. It would still go ahead with the policing. Further getting into the details and best practices, I would like your attention on certain pointers here. Strict firewall mode, as I mentioned, is disabled by default. When strict firewall mode is enabled, the switch will drop all VLAN, VRF, IPv4, IPv6 unicast traffic unless a defined and attached security policy in PSM is in place for the VLAN or VRF, or a strict bypass is configured on the switch at the VLAN VRF level. Now, mind this point wherein we're talking about redirection, right? For the redirected traffic, now that could be by any supported means to the DSM. Ensure you have a security policy which has a rule deny permit as per your requirement at VRF or VLAN level for expected stateful inspection. So if you still have a redirection for some reason, but you do not have a security policy, you are anyways having traffic moving to the DPU, and the strict firewall mode on does not affect it, right? So have a security policy if you want to control that, even though you have the mode on. Again, I have already highlighted on which profiles the strict mode operates at a different level. So at the leaf or L3 AG, it will be at VLAN level. L3 core and spine profile, it would be at the VRF level. The best practice I would suggest for strict bypass, that's mostly wherein you're trying to control which traffic should be should be inspected or should be part of firewall mode or not. So if you're having a strict bypass enablement, make sure you have it on both the VRF and VLAN level. It is recommended to have a consistent strict mode bypass configuration on all the VLANs in a VRF. Now, VLANs do not inherit the strict mode bypass configuration from the VRF in which they reside in this mode. So in general, the recommendation is that users understand the traffic paths that they want to be running through the switch and to apply PSM policies or strict bypass along the entire path. In the border leaf mode, which is either the L3 core or spine, strict mode bypass must be configured on the VRF level. That's where it works. Note, I think I've already highlighted that multicast and CPU directed traffic is not subject to strict mode controls. And the other ports are such as route only subinterfaces and MGMT VR are not subject as well. Moving on, let me take the configuration part of the strict bypass. The syntax, as I highlighted earlier, would be this. Under the VLAN or the VRF level, you will have firewall mode strict bypass, no firewall mode. Strict bypass, either it enables or disables. The default setting for all the VLANs and VRF is non-bypass. You have to configure it if you need it, and that is the way to do it under the VLAN context. And ensure that you have a system firewall mode strict command enabled before this, or you need to have that, then this will get affected. Okay. So even if you configure the bypass and you do not have system firewall mode on, if the configuration is just there, it won't do anything much. You need to have the strict mode on for it to bypass anything, right? So let's get into certain details about the configuration as well as troubleshooting. So the main global configuration to enable firewall mode is this. In the configuration, global configuration mode, this command enables or disables strict firewall mode, and setting is disabled by default. Let's take step by step. So show DSM firewall. If you do this and there is no firewall on, it's none here, and you see there's a VLANs and VRF level, you'll see strict mode action policy redirect, unicast and IPv4. Right now I have this on the switch, that's why it's showing IPv4. So what does this mean? 10, 25, 150, 151, and 400. These are already redirected. That means I have sent them to the DPU, and that's why the action policy is redirect. It's just showing what is there. There is nothing happening because I have not enabled this firewall mode strict as of now. And you want to see whether it is really redirected, you can do a show DSM redirect, and you'll see that it is redirected to the module DSM module 1/2, and that is what this particular output, firewall output, was showing us. Now, if I enable the strict mode on and do a shows DSM firewall, the firewall mode would be shown as strict. And under VLAN, you will see still strict mode action policy redirect as so and so. That means what? In this, when the strict mode is on, but only applied to the ones which are not redirected or strict bypassed, existing redirected VLANs or VRF are intact. Here, these are the VLANs which are already redirected. So the traffic is moving through the DPU, and whatever is configured there is what is getting applied, not the firewall mode strict, which will deny the traffic. No, it's not happening. Where is it denying? So the drop output here, you see, these are the ones which are not redirected to the DPU, and these are the ones which are getting dropped because of strict firewall mode. Or you do not have a strict bypass also configured for these VLANs, for example, 1001 and 500, all of them. So these traffic right now is getting dropped. Similarly for IPv6. And if you look at the VRF level, default is anyways in there, so it's not getting dropped. I have one CC, CC10K, all of these VRFs which are getting dropped right now. So if I do a strict firewall, strict bypass configuration, for example, VLAN 1001 is what I've chosen, which is this one. Let me do the pointer. So if I do this 1001, which was already getting dropped, I have chosen that and I put that in strict bypass. And remember, this 1001 is not even redirected. So it's not going through the DPU, it's just there on the switch. So that means I can strict bypass it if I want to. And then if I check the show DSM firewall, a new entry has come up, strict mode bypass configured. I have configured a strict mode bypass for which VLAN, for VLAN 1001. So right now, this traffic is not getting dropped remaining. So it moved from here. You see redirect dropped, it moved from here to here. And that's why I was trying to highlight how you can leverage all this. Moving on, let me try and get into a demo, surely. So I have a 10K in VSX here. They are on in VRF default. And I also have an 8100 here just to have our micro segmentation in play. Also, you can imagine certain traffic moving in. So I'm trying, the focus is on VLAN 150. And I'm trying to ensure that I have two clients, 192.168.150.10, 150.20. Right now, they're able to ping each other. And they're also redirected to the DPU. And I have an allow policy for it. I can deny it, or I can choose to strictly mode firewall mode it, or I can strictly bypass them. So let's try a couple of them. Let me switch my screen. Okay, so here you see I have a 10K here, the same 10K which I just showed you in the demo slide. So I have show DSM firewall, and I have already enabled strict here, right? This is the same output which I showed you, and you see there's a redirected traffic for VLAN 150. Okay, So let's see, if let's say I'll disable this, right? Or let me have this. So it's a strict mode, and I still have a redirected traffic. So VLAN 150 traffic, those two clients should ideally not be getting dropped because it's already redirected. So the strict mode does not get applied to them. So let me show you how. I have VLAN 150 here. So I have VLAN 150.10 and I have VLAN 150.20. If I can show you that. Yes, 150.20. So if I am pinging them right now from 150.10 to 150.20, I can ping them because I do have a policy. So if you want to see the VLANs networks, I have a VLAN 150 under default VRF with an egress policy which I've applied is this one, microseg-cc, and propagation is all good. So if I look at that security policy, microseg.cc, it's an IPv4. So I will try and edit it to show you the rules. So I have this rule called 192.168.150.10 220 permit. So that's why I'm able to permit and I'm able to reach them. Now, even though, look, imagine, even though I have strict mode on after creating this. So if I also try and do, let's say, bypass, right? So I'll go into VLAN 150. I strict bypass it. Firewall. Strict bypass. Let's see, show DSM firewall. So I've configured it to be strict bypassed, right? Earlier it was just 1001 VLAN. Now I have 150 as well. But you see, it has not moved from redirect policy output. It is still getting redirected. So if I bypassed it, it's fine. But redirect is what is going to take precedence. So I should still be able to ping each other, right? I'll ping them and I'm able to ping each other. Perfect. So let's now take a moment to do something more interesting. If I want to remove this, right, let me also get into VLAN 151 and do a firewall mode strict bypass. So show DSM firewall because this is PVLAN which I'm looking at 150 and 151. Now I would want to see if I do not redirect, will I still be able to reach each other because I've bypassed them. So how do I do that? Let me try and probably service bypass it. So if I select this and so was this set service bypassed? Yes. So I will, meaning what? I do not want this VLAN to be redirected. So I've service bypass VLAN 150 and let me see if I do not have this VLAN and that means what? There is no policy which will get applied and I believe it should get reachable within each other. So if I try to ping them, they're still reachable. That means there's no redirection, there is no policy, but there's a strict mode on, but I've service bypassed, sorry, strict bypass them. Now, if I remove the strict bypass, if I remove, let's say from VLAN 150 and 151 together, I will remove firewall strict bypass with a no command. What does it mean? I have, let me see, I am not redirecting 150 and 151, the PV lines. I am also not having them by strict bypassed. I have them under redirect dropped, which is here. That means Now the traffic would not be able to reach each other. If I try to ping, they're not able to reach. So that means strict mode, firewall mode is on. Traffic cannot talk to each other. So this is about strict firewall mode, strict bypass mode. I also showed you service bypassed and how it works. So let me go back to the presentation. So this is where I covered it. I hope this particular session was useful to understand the feature set and what it can do. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day ahead.